You know that moment when your stomach drops, but nothing's actually happened yet? That was me. It started with little things. The way Thomas kissed me goodnight, it used to feel warm, like home. Lately, it felt routine. His phone was always face down, and suddenly he was grooming himself like he was going on dates, not client dinners. I didn't want to be paranoid. But something was off, and every part of me knew it. I told myself stories. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe the firm had big projects. Maybe love just looks different after a few years. But deep down, I wasn't buying it. There's a voice we all have, that quiet whisper inside, the one we train ourselves to ignore. Mine was screaming, so when he left his smartwatch charging by the bed and the screen lit up with a message that wasn't meant for me, I looked. I didn't read much. I didn't need to. Just a few lines. Flirty, intimate, unmistakable. My heart didn't break, not exactly. It hardened, froze. Because what got me wasn't that he was cheating. It was who he was cheating with. And once I realized that, I knew I couldn't cry. I couldn't crumble. No, I needed to think. Her name was Isabel. I'd heard it before, just in passing. His boss, powerful, sharp. The kind of woman who could make or break a career with a glance. I used to wonder what she looked like, just out of curiosity. Now I knew. Her face was on that message thread, smiling, lips parted mid-laugh in a selfie he'd saved. Not just a fling. This was calculated, strategic. A ladder climbed one affair at a time. I sat there for a while, just holding the watch, feeling like I'd stepped out of my own life. It was oddly quiet in the apartment, too quiet for the storm in my chest. I expected to feel rage or panic. But no, I felt calm. Like something had clicked into place. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. That would give him too much. Instead, I started planning. You see, I've always believed that silence speaks louder when timed right. I could have confronted him, could have packed a bag or thrown a glass, but that's not me. That's not how I wanted to be remembered in this story. If he was going to betray me like this, with her, then I needed a response that would echo, one that would linger in both their minds. I started paying attention to patterns, his words, his absences, the new cologne he swore was a gift from a client. All the pieces were there, scattered across our life like crumbs leading to a truth I couldn't unsee. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt strangely awake, like I'd just stepped out of a fog. My heart was bruised, yes, but it was also beating with new clarity. I knew what I had to do. And the funny part? He had no idea. He still kissed my forehead in the mornings, still texted me little updates from work, still played the part of the committed man. It was almost theatrical. But I didn't let it show. I smiled when I had to. I listened. I filed away details. Because when you decide not to fall apart, you get to write the ending on your own terms, quietly, precisely. I wasn't planning revenge, not the kind that screams. What I had in mind was something subtler, something that would unravel them from the inside. A gesture so small, so simple, that it would haunt them more than any confrontation ever could. And that's when the idea bloomed, like a seed that had been waiting, just under the surface, for the right light. I didn't rush it. That's the part most people wouldn't understand. They think when your heart breaks, you either explode or collapse. But I didn't do either. I waited, observed, and when Tomas mentioned almost offhandedly that Isabel's birthday was coming up, something about a little office thing he was helping organize, well, that was my invitation. Not to the party, of course, but to the moment I'd been crafting in my mind. It needed to be elegant, controlled. Just enough to set the room on fire while I walked away untouched. I didn't want drama. I wanted disruption. The kind that couldn't be ignored. So I ordered flowers. Not just any bouquet. Red and white roses, arranged with intention. Romantic, but also symbolic. And tucked inside, a note. Small, handwritten, just 3 words. Now we are 3. I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. I knew Isabel would recognize the handwriting. She'd seen it on holiday cards we sent from the beach. in notes I left for Tomas on the fridge. It was the perfect blend of civility and devastation. No shouting, no confrontation, just truth, delivered in petals. I imagined it in my head a dozen times. The delivery arriving at her office, tucked between budget reports and coffee cups. She'd be surrounded by her team, pretending to be surprised while Tomas lingered nearby, trying too hard to look casual. And then, the flowers, arranged beautifully, almost innocently, until she saw the card, until those 4 simple syllables unraveled her. I didn't want to humiliate her. That would have been too easy. I wanted her to feel it, to realize that she wasn't untouchable, that someone had seen through the performance, that I had seen. There's a kind of precision in that, a poetry. A message so delicate and yet so heavy, it says everything without screaming a word. That was the point. I wanted her to read it and wonder who else had heard the whisper. And Tomas? He'd be right there, wouldn't he? Watching her face as she read the note, feeling the blood drain from his own. I imagined the moment they'd lock eyes, hers full of panic, his full of guilt. And around them? Silence. The kind that only comes when a truth drops like a stone in the middle of a room. That was the moment I was aiming for. Once I sent the order, I didn't second-guess it. There was no hesitation, no late-night guilt creeping in. I went about my day, folded laundry, made tea, answered emails like any other Tuesday. But underneath that calm surface there was a pulse, a quiet satisfaction, steady and sure. I wasn't waiting for chaos. I wasn't even interested in watching it unfold. My part was done. I'd spoken without opening my mouth. I never tracked the delivery. Never called to confirm. I knew it would arrive right on time. Because things like this have their own gravity. You set them in motion, and they land exactly where they're meant to. It's not about revenge. It's about recognition. About reclaiming the part of yourself that was lied to and making sure the lie doesn't go down easy. I didn't need them to fall. I just needed them to feel it. And the beauty of it all? They'd never see me coming. They'd look at each other, then around the room, and realize this wasn't a scene. It was a statement. One they'd carry long after the petals wilted. One they couldn't explain away. And while they scrambled to pick up the pieces, I'd already be somewhere else, breathing easier. They say timing is everything, and whoever delivered those roses, perfect. Just after the cake was cut, while people were still clinking glasses and laughing politely, Isabel was glowing, lipstick just touched up, Tomas hovering nearby like a shadow pretending not to hover. And then the bouquet. It must have stood out right away. Bold, graceful, a little too intimate for an office gift. She reached for the card, expecting flattery. What she got was truth. Now we are 3. I imagine the shift was instant. Her smile faltered. Just a flicker. Enough for the closest assistant to notice. She read it again, slower this time, like her brain needed a second pass to believe it. I can almost picture her fingers tightening around the card, her eyes flicking up to meet Tomas's. And there he is, pale, frozen, not in control anymore. For once, he's not the one setting the tempo. It didn't need to be loud, it just needed to land. And oh, it did. You could probably hear it in the way the room changed. Voices dipping, glances exchanged. Maybe someone laughed awkwardly, not realizing what the card meant at first. But Isabel knew. Tomas knew. And in those few seconds, the temperature in that polished glass and chrome office dropped 10 degrees. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could feel it unfolding, like a scene I'd already written. Isabel, so composed, so in control, now blinking too fast, her mouth just slightly open, as if forming a defense she hadn't rehearsed. And Tomas? He must have tried to lean in, to whisper something, to salvage the moment. But it was too late. The silence between them had already started speaking louder than anything he could say. The others caught on quickly. Office gossip doesn't need much oxygen, just a flicker. One assistant raises an eyebrow, another mutters something to a colleague by the coffee machine. The note gets passed around quietly, then not so quietly. Suddenly, the celebration turns brittle. Laughter fades. People start remembering emails they need to answer, calls they need to take. No one wants to be too close when the bomb finishes going off. And Isabel? Her power wasn't in her title. It was in her poise. But poise can't survive betrayal under fluorescent lighting. She snapped the card shut too forcefully, a crack in the armor. And just like that, the unspoken rules of their little empire began to shift. The queen had flinched, the knight had stumbled, and everyone was watching. By the time the flowers were removed, quietly, discreetly, as if they were something shameful, everything had changed. No one said a word to Isabel directly, of course. Not yet. But the tone had shifted. The glances were sharper now, measured. HR would hear about it. Someone would make sure of that. Not out of malice, just curiosity, professionalism, survival. That's how scandals are born, not with a scream, but with a murmur. Thomas was spiraling. I know him. He probably tried to play it cool, laugh it off. Crazy coincidence, right? But the man was never good at improvising, especially not when his power was tied to hers. And hers? Well, it was now tied to mine. That note, that moment, it cut through the glass walls of their world like a breeze in winter. Clean, sudden, undeniable. And the best part? I hadn't said a single word. I hadn't walked into their space, hadn't made a scene. But I was there, in every glance, every awkward silence, every whisper by the water cooler. I was the ghost they couldn't shake. And while they stood there, trying to figure out how to patch the cracks, I was already gone, already watching the next domino lean forward. The fallout was faster than I expected. One day, Isabel was untouchable, commanding boardrooms, leading strategy calls like a queen at court. The next, her name was being murmured in meetings she wasn't invited to. HR launched an internal review, a phrase that sounds harmless, but in their world, it's a warning shot. People started keeping their distance. Her polished confidence started to fade, one missed memo at a time. Tomas didn't fare much better. The promotion he'd been bragging about quietly disappeared. Restructuring, they said. Timing's just not ideal. He tried reaching out to me, of course. Calls, texts, voice notes I didn't bother to open. He even stood outside my building once. Just stood there. But I never went down. I didn't owe him presence. Silence was doing the work just fine. And on the outside, I was calm. I wore soft colors, posted pictures of sunsets, coffee cups, long walks by the park. I crafted the image of peace, because that's exactly what I felt. Peace and something else. Not satisfaction. Not quite. But something quieter. Steadier. Like finally putting down a weight you didn't know you'd been carrying. I never said a word publicly. Not one accusation, not one dramatic retelling. But that didn't stop the story from spreading. The card, the flowers, the expression on Isabel's face when she read the note, people filled in the blanks on their own. Turns out, the imagination is a much louder storyteller than I ever could be. In the right circles, I became an urban legend, a whispered warning wrapped in roses. What really surprised me, though, was the support. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me out of nowhere, cryptic texts like, "You're iconic," or just a simple rose emoji. A few knew the full story, most didn't, but they didn't need to. All they saw was that I handled betrayal with a kind of grace that doesn't need headlines. That's the thing about dignity. It travels. And Tomas? He started posting quotes. You know the kind. Growth comes from pain. Lessons learned. That sort of thing. The digital equivalent of wounded pride wrapped in borrowed wisdom. I almost pitied him. Almost. But I reminded myself, he made his choices. He stepped outside of us. I just handed him the mirror. I posted just once. No names, no hints, nothing that could be traced back with certainty. Just a photo of me, calm, bathed in golden light, a coffee cup in hand, and the caption, "When they go low, send flowers." That was all. No hashtags, no location. But the people who needed to understand, they understood. It spread in whispers, in group chats, in quiet chuckles behind glass walls. I never replied to Tomas. Not once. I watched his name slide across my screen like a stranger's. Missed calls, pleading messages. At one point, he wrote a long email about clarity and emotional confusion. I didn't finish reading it. I didn't need to. The clarity was mine now. The confusion? That was his to carry. And just like that, the storm I never started began to settle. Not with closure, not with an apology, but with space. Real, deep, healing space. I'd done what I came to do. Not to destroy them, just to remind them. Some women don't beg, don't chase, don't explode. Some women send flowers and let the silence bloom. Months passed, quietly, cleanly, like the air after a storm, still damp, still heavy, but full of light. I didn't talk about what happened. I didn't need to. The world moved on, and so did I. My mornings became mine again. No waiting on messages, no tiptoeing around tension. Just me, a fresh cup of coffee, and the slow, sacred ritual of rebuilding. Tomas disappeared from my feed not long after. Last I heard, he left the company. Personal reasons. I imagine the bitterness settled in, like dust in an empty room. As for Isabel, she was reassigned. Same smile, different title, a little less sparkle. Her reign was over, but she wore it like perfume, lingering even when the scent had faded. No one looked at her the same after that day. Me? I was glowing, not in the dramatic, post-breakup revenge body kind of way. No. Mine was quieter, the kind of glow that comes from knowing you didn't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone else, from knowing you stayed steady, graceful, unshaken. People noticed. They always do, especially when you refuse to explain yourself. There were moments, small and unexpected, when the memory flickered. A song we used to play in the car, a restaurant I used to book for his birthdays. But even those echoes softened with time. They lost their sting, became background noise. I didn't hate him. That would have taken too much energy. And honestly, I didn't care enough to hate. Indifference, real, earned indifference, is far more powerful than rage. Sometimes I'd catch people glancing at me differently, a subtle nod of respect. A quiet curiosity, as if they'd heard the story but couldn't quite believe the woman in front of them had pulled it off with such precision. But I had, not because I'm cold, not because I'm cruel, but because I believe in responding, not reacting, in choosing art over war. I wanted them both to remember me not as the victim, but as the one who turned pain into poetry. There's something satisfying in not needing to be loud, in letting the aftermath speak on your behalf. I didn't burn the bridge. I didn't torch the building. I just opened a window and let the truth drift in. The rest took care of itself, and as the dust settled, I felt lighter, freer, like I'd rewritten a part of myself I didn't even know needed a new beginning. The other day, I walked past a little florist tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. I hadn't planned to stop, but something pulled me toward the window. Red and white roses, just like the ones I'd sent. Still beautiful, still dangerous. I smiled. Not out of pride, not out of regret, but from a place deeper than both. A quiet knowing, a memory that no longer hurt to hold. I didn't need closure. I didn't need revenge. All I ever needed was to remember who I was before he made me doubt it. And that woman, the one who thinks, who listens, who acts with purpose, she was never gone. She was just waiting. Waiting for the moment I'd choose myself again. And I had. In every quiet decision, every calm breath, every moment I let go without needing applause. So I kept walking. No rush, no noise, just me, passing the petals that once carried my message. And as I turned the corner, I felt it. The lightness of a chapter truly closed. He may have broken something, but I built something stronger, something that didn't need to shout.